The truth is, a lot happened this week.
It is getting cold. The temperature is dropping so fast.
And much of it was unexpected. And when living full-time in a van, you quickly learn that experiencing the unexpected becomes, well, expected. Last week you watched as we spent time overlooking a gorgeous mountain view while I installed my tiny wood stove that will provide us with warmth and comfort throughout winter. And once that was completed, we relocated again to this very special corner of the desert to visit some very special people.
We have a very sleepy girl here. We got up way too early for her, didn't we? Are you going back to bed? Is it just too early? If you guys want to see the real beauty shot though, look, I still even got a dress on. And some slippers. Couldn't miss the sunrise for anything.
You'd be too fired up when I needed it.
That's the plan, Baron?
What's that?
Are you going to do the bottom? Do you want to be down here and doing the bottom one?
I thought Chris was doing it.
Oh, Chris is doing it?
Yeah, I was gonna do this.
Then I'm going to just follow you on top.
Okay.
It's just sketchy if you're like walking rafter to rafter because they want to twist, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, see this?
Now you might recognize this house, and if you aren't already familiar, I'll introduce you to some very neat people. This is Elsa and Baron. These two lived nomadically in a scamp for 6 years before purchasing their very own piece of desert, and are now working to create a homestead with the help of the incredible community that surrounds them. I have always been drawn to these two, not because of their beautiful videos or their unique adventures, but because of their authenticity, their connection to nature, and their drive to create a life that isn't formed by the pressure of society, but rather their own idea of what a full and meaningful life means to them. And when I finally told Elsa that we were headed their way, she said, and I quote, "Be prepared to not want to leave." And I suppose that was the first unexpected event. Because she was right.
It's cold outside. Wow, my contacts are almost frozen. I need to store them elsewhere. Guess what? It's so cold, but it's snowing outside. This is the first snow of the season. And it is so cozy, and I have to start my wood stove. I really can't stay. Baby, it's cold outside.
I'll trade you.
You want me to heat that up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Last night I made backstrap and butternut squash and sweet potato soup for Elsa and Baron, and we didn't clean up after, so I still have a huge mess this morning, which sometimes that's just the way it goes. I'm pretty sure that my drain is frozen, so my water in my sink can't drain. That's okay, who cares? It's snowing outside. How fun! I think the snow is already going away. The sun is burning it up. It's okay though. Still very cold out. I need to start this wood stove.
ever since I put my wood stove back in, I have been so happy with it. Last year for the off-grid challenge, if you're unaware, Chris and I spent, it was like 3.5 months completely off the grid in northern Wisconsin last year. It was wild. And I had installed my stove a little bit differently because I guess because it was my first time having a stove in the van. And this year I decided to remove a wall that I had built. I changed the entire base setup of it, removed the little railing, and I have just been so happy with my stove install. Chris's heater in the bus isn't working well. Diesel heaters can be finicky, man. We've been relying a lot on it and it has been fantastic. I'm having my AG one with coconut water this morning because I think that's gonna just be really delicious. There's definitely some weather moving in, and I'm pretty sure it's starting to snow again. So I'm making sure that everything is prepped in the case that it gets really cold. Woo! Wow. It is getting cold. The temperature is dropping so fast. I have something really exciting to share. Last year, there was a short sale of merch, and 100% of the proceeds of last year's merch went to public land. This year, I asked over on Instagram where people wanted this year's money to go, and an overwhelming amount of people were asking for like animal shelters or shelters that get very little funding and are overpopulated, that kind of thing. I'm not going to announce the nonprofit quite yet, but it is an animal shelter. I believe she's a single mother and just doing really amazing work. So that will be public a little bit later, but what I did want to do is show you guys this year's design. So this year's design for merch is a Northwoods inspired design, and I love working with this artist. He did the beautiful artwork for last year. Can you see that? This is an overall like sneak peek preview kind of the design. And I was pretty attached to having a Northwoods inspired design because so many of you wanted something Northwoods inspired last year. So this is just in honor of the beautiful winter that we spent in northern Wisconsin. And once again, 100% of the profit from the merch sales will be going to a nonprofit. It's gonna be great this year. I just had to show you how cute that design is. Next up, water, which really just means stealing water from Elsa and Barron. One day I'll have a well on a piece of property and some fruit trees and a garden and maybe some goats. Chris has been in meetings all day, otherwise he would 100% be helping. While that first snowfall of the season definitely added an element of surprise and beauty, the excitement didn't end there. Because that evening, I got a text from a friend that said he was on his way south after a week in the backcountry for a very special visit. Traveling here alongside Chris to visit Elsa and Barron, and then adding Terry to the mix felt quite surreal. This first morning with everybody together made me so grateful and filled with joy. Seeing all of these amazing people sharing ideas and enjoying each other's company was such a gift.
And I started crawling, and I had no conceptualization of the range because, you know, it's so disorienting in there and claustrophobic. I thought it was probably 20.
Now, have you recognized Terry yet? I'm sure many of you have, because Terry is famously known from the show Alone, specifically season 9. Terry has been a huge inspiration for me and has endless knowledge and unique perspectives, especially when it comes to our connection with nature. and I'm really excited to share him with you.
Okay. There's some good vitamins and minerals in there, isn't there? I'm a big fan of organ meats too, Akila. You're so helpful. I could just leave it overnight with you and
Seriously though.
it'll be way cleaner than I can get it.
Goodness, are you helping so good?
It's so good.
So, do you want to tell a little bit about this guy?
Well, I don't want to bore anybody, but it's, you know, for me, they're such magnificent animals and such a special trip. And I had never hunted or harvested mule deer before, so this
This is your first mule deer?
first mule deer.
Because you've always done whitetail?
Whitetail, Sitka blacktail. Yeah, the West is a real frontier for me.
I think for some people that are not familiar with hunting, they're going to see a beautiful rack like this and then maybe be upset that you are working on an animal skull right now and you want to keep the rack. And there's a lot of negative connotation to that, especially from those that don't live a life like you do.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. I understand. Oh my goodness, there's so much to unpack here.
I know.
I guess to begin with, we could start with how I live, which is off-grid in Alaska. I've spent the last 12 years living out of a tent in the backcountry, just going from one region or one mountain range or sub-range to another. And I haven't bought meat in 12 years. Now there's some caveats to that when I'm traveling, especially traveling abroad. I want to eat what the locals eat. I try to live very close to the land. I understand animals better than I do people a lot of times. And I spend 8 to 10 months a year with no electronics. I live somewhat like they do. I live off the land. I follow them around. Try to unravel why they are where they are at any given time. And you know, they mean a lot to me. I truly appreciate them. And I can understand how it would be very difficult for folks to understand how I can harvest or kill something I profess to love. And it's because, well, I've tried to go vegetarian and I've been told, you know, you didn't take it long enough, or you didn't go long enough, you didn't give it enough time. I feel better when I do consume meat. And I love farmers, I love ranchers, but I don't love the systems in place. You know, I mean, we have so many hungry people on the planet. I certainly don't want to see anyone hungry, but I don't love what they have to do to try to meet the demand, what the animals go through. So it does not give me the right to kill an animal, to take a life. But I do try to do it in the most ethical, fastest way possible. And that's really important to me because I truly do care about them. They fascinate me. There's always something to learn. And I think we can learn a lot from them. You know, there's no dishonesty, there's no greed. It's just pure survival, and I like learning from that. So I hunt, and like I'll use the hide, I use the bones, I keep the antlers to try to honor the animal. Sometimes I make tools out of them, out of the antlers, out of the bones. I eat everything that's edible and some things that probably aren't. We hear so many terms. I'm not a big fan of the term natural resource because I think that lends itself to the commodification of wildlife and wild places, and I don't support that. The reason I harvested this animal is it was very mature. I had spent a week in the area looking at all of the wildlife I could possibly find. I deemed this animal to be the most mature. Also happened to be the largest of body of any that I had located throughout the week.
And explain the importance of taking a mature buck.
So,
because I think that also is lost on a lot of people. They think like bigger the better, not understanding the herd health aspect of it, or like the, you know?
I love that you brought that up. You know, we use these terms, but we don't explain why they're so important. Yeah, so for me, maturity is important for a couple of reasons. One of the main ones is, you know, able to pass the genetics that were successful to get that animal. You know, it's a really hard life out there. It's a hungry world, a lot of difficult things to navigate, and they have to be so keyed in all the time, and they're just amazing at it. And there's some genetics that lend themselves to that more than others, and that's what we want to pass on. And if it's made it to a certain age, well, then it's got a good possibility of that. But for me, something I've seen in cervids and ungulates, cervid being deer and ungulate being a hooved animal. Let's take a very old mule deer. So he's had an opportunity to pass his genes and his genetics on to the next generation, benefiting the herd. He has learned techniques to help him fight, and in such, he is more likely to win fights against younger bucks. What tends to happen is a buck will get so old, you know, they kind of harem up does. So this buck was with, first time I saw him, he had 20 does.
Wow.
When I went in to stalk him, he had 8. And then there was a couple of satellite bucks kind of hanging around, hoping for something to go into estrus and he would sneak in. Well, what happens is once they get to a certain age, they can no longer effectively get to all the females in a timely manner. So what happens is the reason they rut in November is because their gestation, I don't know the exact amount of days, but it is timed, the rut is timed, so that the females are bred, they have a gestation that drops the fawns at when is typically the most advantageous time to be born. You know, the bad weather for the season is for the most part over. There's plenty of high quality forage for the mother, so she has high protein milk. Well, if that buck is so old he can't get to all of them in time, he breeds them later and later in the year. The ones that aren't bred in the first rut, there'll be what's called a secondary rut, and the ones that weren't bred will go back into heat. He'll go back around again, breed the does. Well, he ends up breeding them so late that their gestation period, they end up dropping them, giving birth to the fawns later in the summer, or later in the spring, early summer. They don't have enough time to put on enough weight to make it through the winter.
Oh, wow. I never really thought about it like that.
And to be, not to be cold, but just from a purely biological standpoint, when they're utilizing resources, there's the term again, that other animals would benefit from, because there's just a finite, it's called carrying capacity, there's just a finite amount of nutrition on any landscape for any given animal. Well, if you've got a third of your population utilizing that resource and then they die, the other ones are also weakened from that. So if I'm going to harvest an animal, I would want it to be one that would be as beneficial as possible or as least detrimental as possible to the overall health of the herd. So that's why I look for mature animals. And this was estimated to be 6 years old. So he's not to the point where he's going downhill, but he is the most mature that I could locate, and therefore he has spread his genetics. Those are the kind of things that I tend to look for when out afield.
Yeah, I think that was beautifully said.
You want to give it a go?
Give what a go?
Removing some of that?
Yeah. What are you going to use it for?
I'm just going to tie flies.
Oh, cool.
And then eventually what you can do is choose an area that makes sense and make a straight line and cut it all the way to the outside. That way you can work it around and peel it back. I find that a vertical poke to start, you got it. And then all the way through. So then you just follow that all the way up to the pedicle, which is the bone structure from which the antler.
Is this technique right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is tricky, and you can do it just like that, and that's fine.
How do you do it?
So I turn the knife blade towards me, which I'm not stoked about when you're the one doing it. Yep, and then I just work it in there.
Oh, so
and then I pivot just like that. Yeah, that's perfect. See how you're peeling it away with your other hand is ideal. Does the camera want to see? Not to tell the captain how to captain.
Yeah, do you want to go grab it?
Oh my goodness sakes, I shouldn't have said anything. To be perfectly honest, I do get embarrassed. Very rarely will you ever see me in camouflage. I try to be an ambassador for the discipline. And the way I speak and the way I move and the things I do and the things I don't do are partially because I want to be an ambassador. Nice work. Wow.
Okay, look.
Oh, that is excellent.
What do you think, Akila? How beautiful.
It is beautiful fur.
That's so cool. Look at that.
Well done. That's perfect. That is one.
That's so cool. Where do you want me to set
one
this?
piece.
Or are
I'll
you going to
take
clean it up a little bit? So then are you going to clean this up more before you salt it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just quickly. I don't want to take up the whole evening for everybody, but this is serious business, isn't it? Yes. I know. I think so too. I love these animals. I spend months sometimes watching the same animal, learning its habits. Sometimes I feel like I've taken a representative of myself, a representation, like the same age class that I would be if I were a deer. And I'm living in a spot that I think is beautiful. So there's a reverence for life, and there is a sadness, a awareness of that. As you can attest, there are so many variables that so rarely line up, no matter how skilled we are, or how practiced we are, or how careful we are. It just doesn't go in our favor often. So I think the smile is a representation of all the hardship that has been endured and experienced. And I think of blown stalks, and I think of many miles and sore back and blisters on the feet and frostbite, and then it culminates in the moment of the harvest. And when I look at a set of antlers, I remember what I have navigated. I remember what I experienced. I remember the vegetation, the flora, the fauna, the songbirds, the sunrise, the sunset, the constellations, Orion the hunter. I remember the temperature and the wind direction. And I remember being very hungry and very cold and very wet and really blissful and really happy and really thankful. It makes me appreciate everything that much more. It makes me kind of cognizant of sort of a transference of energy. Like I feel more connected, and I think that that's a disconnect that we really suffer from as a society, is a disconnect from where our food comes from, what that process really entails. I don't know a backcountry hunter that has put in that effort, has connected with that animal, understood that animal, and then is willing to throw away a scrap. A lot of these hunts, I'll put in 60, 80 miles. Everything I have access to for the month is on my back. I go in heavy and I hope to come out heavier. I carry every morsel of meat, might be 80 miles. And that's labor intensive, and you got to take it out of your pack every night. You got to hang it, let it get cold again. Like, we're very concerned about the quality of the meat, and I think we've lost that because it's so sanitized and so insulated now. The process of, I have people that berate me and ask me why I don't get meat from the grocery store from animals that haven't been harmed. And it just breaks my heart. I've had this conversation more than once. And there's such a disconnect. People don't realize what the animals in those farms are going through. They don't realize, they just don't understand. And I think it's partially because they don't want to, because it's convenient, it's easy, it's accessible, and the truth is none of those. And somehow paying someone else to do it absolves you, and I don't see it that way. And I wish I could just give people a sampler of the entire experience, just touch them on the shoulder and let them feel, like truly feel, all the feelings. All right, well, I could keep yakking on about this for, a few months, but for what I'm looking for at the moment, what are you looking for, pup dog? Stop teasing me with this. So now we're gonna go rub it down liberally with salt, and that just pulls all the moisture out of it, keeps it from rotting. And the fact it's well below freezing every night will do the same. And well, thanks for listening to me ramble.
Thank you so much.
For Terry's final evening, Barron set up a bonfire, Elsa made homemade venison soup, and we all told stories for hours. Well, we actually just forced Terry to tell us all of his incredible stories, like his adventures in Brazil and his bear encounters, his time living with tribes across the globe, and the ins and outs of his experience on Alone. And much of this will be available for you too, once his new book is released, and I will make sure to keep you in the loop about that.
And the generosity and hospitality.
Each day here, since Chris and I arrived, has provided me with a sense of clarity and deep friendship, a lot of inspiration, and a feeling that comes with being home. But more on that later. Have a great week, everybody.
How do I look? Oh God. Okay. Why is this? You made it look so easy when you were doing this.
I've been doing this for like
Okay, I'm gonna go this way.
28 years.
Should we hang out, keep doing this, or should we go play Magic?
Taking it nice and slow. No hurry here, folks. Y'all come back and see us, man.
Bye, Terry.
When we wake, hear the birds and see the sun. Side by side our fears are done. Oh, the good times just begun.